Before the video starts, I just want to say one thing first. This video is not about bitterness or regret. It's about honesty. And I'm still close enough to my old life, which is still very fresh. I'd rather share it raw now than to polish it into something safe later. You're getting the real deal. You're getting the raw thoughts and emotions and the things that tied to it. So today marks the first official month of my early retirement. I'm still having a hard time calling it that. I almost want to call it unemployment, even though I know the probability of finding work again is very unlikely, especially full-time work. Quite frankly, the more I think about it, even just 1 month into this, there's just no way I can do it again. I cannot go back into that kind of routine and lifestyle. I've been struggling a little bit this month. I'm not going to say, oh yeah, I'm not very emotional. I'm pretty even keeled, even with major life changes. This is huge. This is a huge life change. I look forward to, the quintessential freedom, that freedom, that word freedom. And to everybody, it means something different. I'm still trying to figure out what that freedom means. I think it's a freedom to have the space to do what you want to do. And we say that, but we still need to be careful because it's not like we can do anything we want to do. We can't. There's limitations to what we want to do. So it's a bit of a super idealistic way of saying I have the time now to do whatever I want. I mean, you have limitations of health, you have limitations of location, you have limitations of money. There's things I might want to do, but I can't. I just can't do it. You do what you can afford. Unfortunately, I don't need a lot of money to do what I want to do. But anyway, that's kind of besides the point. So I'm still trying to work this out. I can't say that I'm jumping for joy because I don't really do that. It's just trying to make sense of all the time that I have now, because it's a change. I mean, if you've gone through it already, I mean, it's a huge change. By the way, do you like my background? Finally, the plastic is up. The boy that kind of slept in this tukul, this mud hut, not a mud hut, this straw hut, he's gone as of about a week ago. So pretty happy about that. It's been 1 month and no alarm clocks, no emails, no pretending to care about things I need to care about. And it turns out there are a few things, though, I do miss about work since it's relatively fresh. And today I just wanted to talk about kind of some of the things that I miss, that surprise me, and what I absolutely don't miss. And there's probably more what I don't miss than what I do miss. And, I just gave you a little update on what it's felt like in this first month. It's a little confusing. It's a bit of a conundrum to because my life has been so structured for most of it, as most of you know, or experience yourself. It's been strange to make a new relationship with the time. I just want to start out with, these are some things that I don't miss about work. Having to deal with colleagues. And I can't throw them all in there. There's just a few. And in my last job, it was particularly specific to, and then you had an entity, the board. So I won't name names, but I am going to identify the issues that I had to deal with each of them. Can you identify with any of these? The thing that's difficult about saying this is I've worked with difficult people over the years. I've worked with full-on narcissists, full-on unqualified people, one or two completely incompetent. It wasn't enough that I would want to stop working. Most of my life, it wasn't until 5 years ago I just realized I can't do this anymore. So even just 10 years ago, well, actually it wasn't even 10 years ago, I had a pretty good experience then. But I had difficult people my whole career. None of them ever made me feel like I don't want to work anymore. I just plugged along. I'm self-aware. I know that there might be people that didn't get on with me. I mean, there were people that I just didn't get on with. But generally, I'm a pretty collaborative person. I'm a flexible person. So for someone to say that I'm difficult, I mean, you'd have to really give me some hard reasons why. Compared to some of the people I've worked with, I just don't know how some of these people get jobs and keep jobs, because they're not flexible and they're not qualified. And I remember a critique that I got from not a critique, but a compliment actually from someone years ago, and most of my career was like this. They said I was the most flexible and collaborative finance director they've ever worked with, because most direct finance directors are very strict, and I always tried to find a way to bridge to do what we wanted to do. But anyway, that's another story. But specifically, there is some recency bias here. But one was my boss. I mean, in the same organization, I went from a fully competent, very fair, collaborative, someone she got her hands dirty, one of the best I ever worked with. She wasn't very good with conflicts, but she put them under the rug. But this guy, he just was incompetent. Can you imagine, have you ever had to sit at a table and watch someone who had no idea what he was doing call the shots? He had no ideas. He never brought any ideas. He'd walk out on problems, and then he would be the one making the final decision based on whatever floated his boat at the moment. I only ever experienced this one other time 30 years ago in Haiti. The guy came in from retirement. He's in his 70s. I don't have a problem with the age, and you would expect that there would be wisdom with age. This guy was a fool. Either the age caught up to him, or this was how he was his whole life. And then listening to his comments, having to listen to his extra added personal opinions about things and people. I kept my personal opinions, my politics out of work. He felt like he could say it because he was in charge, giving opinions about like certain politicians and world leaders. I could care less. I mean, it had nothing to do with what we were talking about, but I think he took advantage to just say these things, to vent his own opinion, and I just don't have to deal with that anymore. It was so irritating. It was almost like he was trying to make a point, but he never really had a point. I mean, the advantage was he let me go. He didn't really micromanage me. Another colleague, I mean, he was a philanthropist. He was a bleeding heart, but he should have never been doing what he was doing. He wasn't qualified. Competent in certain other areas. He could have been, doing another job. He should have been doing another job, but not running operations. He had no training. He was a medical doctor. So, of course, when he speaks very eloquently, very smooth. I'm like a Neanderthal. I'm like a caveman next to him speaking, because I'm very, very rough, very gruff, and very basic conversation. I went to college and everything, but I don't have a high vocabulary, and I don't think anything of myself. But standing next to him, you could feel stupid. Just listening. I mean, he was almost like listening to someone read an encyclopedia. He used all these big, fancy 25-cent words, but he had no place in that job. And in NGO world, there's a lot of bleeding hearts coming in, and they don't have the skills to actually do the job. It's just because they can speak well, and if you don't really know what they're talking about, you can think that they know what they're doing. Theoretically, he might know the theory, but he doesn't know how to actually implement it. And we had so many problems we had to fix. I just don't have to listen to that anymore. And then the gaslighting. This was one of the biggest gaslighters I have ever met. Manipulation. It took me a couple years to realize what was irritating me about him, and it just started dawning on me one time, and then once I called him out on it, our relationship started to really deteriorate. I called him out on the manipulation and the gaslighting, and I think he felt exposed. That's why he just became a nemesis. So I didn't need to deal with that anymore. But the gaslighting, just pretending, over trying to rewrite reality, I couldn't take it anymore. The interruptions all day at the office, people coming in for silly things, and or you having to listen to someone bend your ear about complaining about something else for somebody else, and another small problem, conflicts, some of the internal conflicts between the staff I had to deal with or had to listen to. And I did it just to give them an opportunity, because quite frankly, I did not want to get on their bad side. It was such a toxic office that I needed to try to keep my even keel with people. There was no accountability. Like again, I reported the boss for corruption, and the board let him go. They never even concluded my case. Accountability with my peer who shouldn't be implementing what he does. He's not qualified, and I would always have to be fixing his overspending on budgets, his underspending on budgets, his not understanding compliance. I had to fix all of it all the time. So, just all the internal conflicts that the leadership didn't deal with and manage. The second thing I don't miss was the constant bombardment work thoughts. Since I've been away, I can't believe how free my mind is to think and be present and not be worried about things. Not be worried about this conflict, this conversation, this problem with this person, or this Excel problem, this budget problem, funding problem. I don't have to think about it. Those consumed me 24/7. Going to bed, waking up, I'd have nightmares. Waking up, and I'd be consumed with problems. I could never be present with my wife. I could never be present working out. I could never really grasp the moment, and I never had that before until this past job. Pretending to get holidays and breaks and weekends when I really didn't get them. This job, I was on 24/7. I was called to do reports 2 days after burying my mom. No break. Because it was such a small organization and because of the position I held, we had no one above us. There wasn't anybody else who could do what I did. If you do try to take a holiday, like I went on honeymoon with my wife 2 years ago, just the anxiety of knowing that there's problems brewing, having to go back to work. It's very rare that I ever had a job that I had this much anxiety. Fourth one, fake friendliness in the office. Hi, how are you? How are you? How are you? How was your day? How was your weekend? Nobody cares. Nobody cares about your weekend. The only thing they care about is telling you about their problems or what happened. Oh, my kid was sick. It just was forced friendliness. And this is why I said, it's very rare that you really have a friend within the office. And those casual conversations can sometimes get you into trouble. Sometimes those conversations cause gossip amongst each other. So I just try to stay out of it. And within the past year, I stopped really asking. I'm like, the person doesn't care. So I'm just wanting to break that cycle of fake friendliness. Potential for there to be some gossip that could come from the conversation. I just wanted to break free from that. Number 5, sitting in a chair almost all day. If I wasn't in the meeting, I was sitting on my desk. I spent the last 6 months quiet quitting, and I'm telling you, I'm so glad I did it. I did it for about a year, but the 6 months toward the end, I really upped the ante on quiet quitting. A way to stay sane, take back all the time that I lost. I didn't come close to it. But it was, there was some psychological win in that, in saying, not doing more, not volunteering for more, even though I did, but I could have volunteered for more. Just doing less, not trying to cover for other people, doing the bare minimum that I was responsible for, working at home from as often as I could, and going for walks as often as I could. Once a month, I'd go out for an afternoon massage. Nobody noticed. The boss never came to see me, hardly. It was one of the good things was he didn't micromanage me because he really couldn't. He didn't know anything about finance or what I did, no matter how many times I explained it to him. This allowed me to distance myself avoid the conflicts, and I just pretended to be agreeable with people. Good. Oh, yeah. I'm glad you had a good weekend. Oh, sorry about your kid. And I just did not take those conversations further than they needed to be. Number 6, being needed. Because of my position and information I had, I was having to be involved in decision making, even though at some point the director started not even including me at all. And this was one of the things I didn't miss. He basically said he didn't really need my opinion to make financial decisions. I said, I think I'm your finance director, I think you do. But I just started letting them go. I just started let it go. Let them make this decision, because they're going to have to face the consequence. And part of that was the constant battle with, more with the two, more with the peer, the gaslighter, the manipulator, the guy who shouldn't have been doing what he was doing. I don't miss those conflicts with him. There was a point that I would try to be agreeable with him, but then and toward the end, I did become more agreeable with him. But before that, it was constant battle with. So I don't miss those conflicts. At the time, it's so intense. But in retrospect, they're like one-off arguments over other staff and the perception of them. Just because he thought he was so smart, he thought he was right all the time. And then he tried to manipulate you into agreeing with him. I have a gift of discernment. He wears filtered glasses with reality, and unfortunately he was the one that the board listened to because he spoke so eloquently. And 7, one of the big ones was I was finally tired of being away from my home. I was living and working in Bangkok, even though our home was here in Laos. So I would only come back to Laos every couple quarters. After COVID, I would come back every couple times a year to visit my house and live in my house, see my dogs, touch my dogs, and sleep in my bed. And I just realized I can't. I don't know how some people can go away from their house for that long. I can understand if it might be a house and family you don't want to be around much, and it gives you that break. And I actually thought that was pretty ideal, but now, not with my situation. I want to be here. So I would go home to a condo that was kind of a temporary housing, and it wasn't like coming home. And I really think that might make a difference. If I found a job where I could come home to my own home, that's a big difference over living in some temporary housing until the job is finished. That also was a conflict for me when I took holiday. Most people will go visit someone. I would love to have gone to see my parents more or my family, but we couldn't. Our holiday was to come home to our home. We never really went on holiday. So coming home was our holiday. So some of the things I miss the income. I miss the security of the income. Going into this phase where I don't have decent income coming in anymore to pay the bills. Now I have to manage what I've saved. And I don't have $1 million. I'm living on a modest budget, with a family and with a wife and some kind of indirect independence. It's true when you marry a foreign girl in one of these countries, you are basically marrying the village, or the family. There's responsibilities that you kind of assume with them because everybody contributes, but they don't have the resources for certain things, especially healthcare. And I've helped a lot with them, but now I don't know what that's going to look like. Without an income, I don't have that kind of resource anymore when I'm just trying to make sure we have enough for us to live on. And I was thinking about the whole interviewing process to earn an income. I was thinking about, when you go for a job, you kind of have to prostitute yourself. You're like a bimbo for work. Oh, so, and you're trying to convince someone why you want the job. And this is the fake part. It's not really fake. I did enjoy what I did. I did like helping people. I never fought for a salary. I always took what they gave me. I kind of always knew they just, they had their ranges and they didn't budge much. I was just pretty content with what they paid me. But really, it's like when you're doing the interview, you have to convince someone, so tell me, why do you want to work for us? I need a freaking job. How about that? I gotta pay the bills, dude. I gotta pay the bills. The game is you have to explain, oh, I love the mission. I want to hurt the refugees. Oh, I want to do this. I did want to help. I sincerely did. But there is a part of it, you're contributing to a mission. You have to convince the other person that you don't care about the money. You want to work for that company. You want to help these specific people. And I saw a guy who was really good at that. I was like, you're like an NGO bimbo. You just say whatever you have to say. You pay the politics. It's a game. It's kind of a negative way of looking at it, but it is. I mean, you go. The only way you do the thing you want to do is really when you have financial freedom. When you don't care about the money, you have the option to go work for something, a mission and an objective, because that's what you value. Most people are looking for a job. They need to pay the bills. They need to feed their families. There was one interview I did with a girl. She was probably the most honest interview. We interviewed some women from Myanmar. So the question is, so why do you want to work for us? Because I want to get out of this country. She was Myanmar. And we kind of chuckled, me and the guy interviewing her. And that's an honest answer. I want to get out of this country, and I'm looking for a way to get into the international. I want to be an expat, working overseas, working across border. Usually the packages are a little better, and it gives you better opportunities than staying local. Plus, Myanmar is under the coup and difficult, but she was very smart. All of her answers were pretty direct. She was no BS at all. One of the rarest times I ever saw that with someone. I appreciated it. We both appreciated it. She wouldn't get away with that in some of the bigger organizations, though. Some of the bigger organizations would not accept that kind of answer. It might depend on who you're talking to, but you kind of have to play the game. Number two, the second thing I miss is the collaboration with people. I love when we came to a conclusion, and there was a good conclusion. And we knew the benefit of something that would be done. I miss that collaboration. I like working with people if they're collaborative. I know I wasn't perfect. I just want the right thing to be done. It doesn't have to be my thing. I've been corrected. I've changed my mind on times about things. As long as it's the right thing for the right reason. One of the things I appreciated was I was trusted to manage tens of millions of dollars within their budgets until the last 2 years with these clowns that are running the organization now. I've had a good career managing multi-million-dollar projects, very complex portfolios, very complex donors, and I really appreciated that I was entrusted with that. I mean, literally carrying hundreds of thousands of dollars in my backpack at one point until that was back in the old days in Africa. I appreciated that trust, and it made me more nervous that I didn't want to ever do anything to break that trust with any other organization. I tried to keep a clean nose with my job, and I think my career showed it. A final thing was I missed using my skills, so over the years my skills developed. My intuition on how to manage especially complex portfolios with donors, governments, multi-currencies. This last job did give me that confidence, even topped up my confidence. My management, my decision making got better. I was quicker. I was able to cut through the chase. I was able to weed out a lot of doubt just the experience. I grew, and that's one of the hard things to let go of. I don't know how I'm going to use those skills now. And it's one of the hardest things about being at this point. I'm afraid I might lose those skills. I'm sure I will use some of those skills in my own personal world, but to that degree, I'm not so sure. But I don't have it, and one of the other final things is I don't have any self-worth in what I did. I'm okay to be a nobody now. I'm okay to be an employed person or a retired person, if that's what it's called. That's one of the other things that has been difficult to know how to do. So when I'm filling out forms and things, I have to put my occupation, especially overseas. I don't know what to put anymore. Do I still put that I'm finance director, or do I put that I'm unemployed? It's a very weird thing because it's it seems too soon to say retired. In fact, I probably would do small jobs. I mean, one thing for sure is I do not want to go back to that again. I just met with my finance planner. He's putting a plan together for me. I said the one thing I can tell you is I cannot go back to that kind of full-time work again. So whatever I have, we have to make work. I'll eat noodles and rice for a week, for a year or two, if I have to. I just cannot go back to that again. I mean, that's just one thing that's very clear. I've appreciated it. I appreciated the experience, but I just know that that's just not possible. I had a conversation with a buddy I haven't spoken to in a year, and he said, what are you gonna do? And he started making me anxious. He was like, you should do this, part-time gigs, small projects, make a website, do a business card. And I started getting anxious about this. I'm like, dude, it's not even a month yet. Let me figure this out. I think I have got a good year before I decide whether I need to pursue something more work or not. So 1 month in, do I miss the work itself? No, not really. I miss a few side effects of the work, primarily the income and being part of a bigger mission. So my objective now is how to keep the good stuff and integrate that into this new life without having to return back to selling my time for money. It's not a negotiable now. So tell me, any of you who are thinking about or in this particular position, what do you miss? What do you don't miss about not working? Take care, everybody. God bless, and take it slow.